I was a straightforward laser physicist at Stanford University. I graduated my PhD there, and then I worked on a textbook, graduate-level textbook on quantum electronics and lasers. And there's nothing like writing a textbook on the subject to realize how much you don't know. And one of the things that struck me as I was working on the book was that we have a pretty good quantum description of all kinds of mechanistic, inorganic interactions, but we don't have a quantum theory that even begins to touch on mind or that kind of thing.
From 1972 to 1997, during the Cold War, the CIA funded what was known as the Stargate program to test if remote viewing could be used as an intelligence tool.
The very first, I'm not talking about 1 out of 100, the very first Soviet facility we looked at was over in the Soviet Union, and it turned out our remote viewer, Pat Price in this case, drew a picture of a crane, and he said, I'm lying on my back on top of a 2-story building, and this crane is rolling over my head, and it's so large that a man is only half a wheel height. Well, when he told me that, I thought that was ridiculous. But in fact, it turns out that's exactly what the site was like. I don't know if you can see here, but in fact, that little dot there is a man. And so when we asked him, well, what do you think the site is used for? He said, well, I think it's for some space application. It was only after the Cold War was over and people from our country got to visit the location, we found out that, in fact, this was for a space application.
The old-fashioned theory was that remote viewing had something to do with the brain, sending and receiving electromagnetic brainwaves like a mental radio transmitter.
And so one way to attack that is to do experiments over and longer distances, and we eventually did experiments over continents and didn't see any degradation of the apparent, quote, ESP data. So distance didn't seem to matter, so that seemed to be a strike against the electromagnetic idea, the brainwave idea. We then put people aboard submarines, took them down to the bottom of the ocean. There's enough shielding of electromagnetic waves in seawater, conductive seawater, that should have blocked it out. In fact, the remote viewer said, oh, this is, quote, psychically quiet. I can do better than ever. So the major area that we're looking at actually has to do with the fact that although empty space appears to be empty, quantum physicists know it's not really empty. It's full of what we call quantum fluctuation energy or vacuum energy.
Hal thinks there is a mysterious energy pervading all empty space in the universe, including the cells of our body and our brains. He calls it vacuum energy, or zero-point energy. It might connect us all, in which case it might explain remote viewing.
It's our liquid nitrogen tank. Yeah, the reason it's called zero-point energy is that even if you were to cool the universe all the way down to absolute zero, where all thermal motions get frozen out, this energy still exists.